Hello, and how are you, my friends? I'm Peter, and here I'm telling you stories about the most interesting European cars of the 80s and 90s. Today we have a long overdue 1000 subscribers special, and I'm going to tell you about my top 15 list of European cars of the 80s and 90s, which I'd love to drive. But before we start, I'd like to say thank you so much to my subscribers. Thank you for your trust and your loyalty that help me make new videos and keep the memories of the most interesting cars of the 80s and 90s. And if you are not subscribed yet, right now it is a great moment to hit the subscribe button below and press the notification bell. Thank you so much! Now let's start with the list. First, the criteria I used for this list. I didn't include any supercars here on purpose. Of course, everybody would like to drive the Ferrari F40, the Porsche 959 or the Lamborghini Diablo. But in this case, the whole list would include only supercars. Maybe I will make another video about supercars only someday in the future. However, one Porsche will appear on this list, but maybe not the one you expect. Second, this is the list of cars which would be especially interesting for me to drive. This is not the top list of the most interesting cars, or best to own cars, or most beautiful cars. No. It is a very driver experience specific list. And the last thing, this is my very subjective, personal list. I am sure that each of you have your own favorite cars of the 80s and 90s, and you may be disappointed that some of those cars were not included in the list, or ended up in the wrong position. There were at least 300 very interesting European cars in the 80s and 90s. I already have many videos about them, and it is still a long way to go. I do encourage you to post your own list of top 5 great to drive European cars of the 80s and 90s in the comments below. Let's compare our lists and make sure that none of the great cars of that era was left unnoticed. Okay, let's start now. Position number 15. The Citroën Xantia Activa. The Activa was the performance version of the Xantia produced from 1995 to 2001. Instead of naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engines installed in regular Xantias, the Activa could have a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine or 3-liter V6 engine, which was the most interesting and dynamic version. The superpower of the Activa was its active suspension, giving it the ability to drive around curves without any chassis roll. The Xantia had a hydropneumatic suspension Hydroactive 2, borrowed from the Citroën XM, which I have another video about. In addition to that, the Activa version had an active undercarriage stabilization system, which was the first standard-fitted active cross stabilizer in automotive history. This provided a very safe and very comfortable ride, even at very active driving and cornering. And the Citroën Xantia Activa still holds the record speed through the Moose test maneuver, making it one of the best handling European cars of the 90s. I don't have a video about the Citroën Xantia yet, but I will make it in the future. Number 14. The 1982 Volkswagen Golf GTI. While the first generation of the Volkswagen Golf is technically a car of the 70s, its improved version with a more powerful engine appeared in 1982 and still belonged to the first generation of the Golf. This wasn't a particularly powerful or very fast car with 110 horsepower. But it was the car which was associated with the birth of the whole famous type of European cars, hot hatches. Personally for me, it would be very interesting to see and feel how that car behaved on the road, more because of the legendary status of the car than its actual performance. Modern cars obviously can drive faster, more active and maybe more interesting, but the Golf GTI was the beginning, which showed the public that even a small family car could be a little naughty beast. I still don't have a video about the Volkswagen Golf, and I have some doubts about its necessity, because there are dozens of good videos about the Golf made by other creators already. But if you want me to tell you the story too, let me know in the comments. Number 13. The Aston Martin V8. This car had a completely different character than the two previous ones. Extremely powerful, raw, muscle, dangerous, very comfortable at the same time, and really expensive, an essence of the British aristocracy. It had a 5.3-liter V8, producing around 400 horsepower, and even over it in some versions. The V8 Vantage, with its 0 to 60 mph acceleration of 5.3 seconds and a top speed over 170 mph, easily left Ferraris, Lamborghinis and Porsches behind on a straight line. Despite its huge power, the V8 didn't have any driving assists or safety features. It was all in your hands how you tamed that beast. And it gave you pure, raw and exciting driving experience. And it was a beautiful car too, with a really classic and attractive design with undeniable road presence with its wide stance, deep front air dam and muscular haunches. No wonder that it became James Bond's car in the Living Daylights movie of 1987. I already have a video about one version of the Aston Martin V8, the Aston Martin V8 Zagato. Check it out. Number 12. The Alfa Romeo 75, known in North America as Alfa Romeo Milano. This car, produced from 1985 to 1992, was the last true Alfa Romeo car before merging with Fiat. It had a perfect 50-50 weight distribution between the front and rear axles thanks to the transaxle configuration. It had many progressive innovations, including advanced dashboard-mounted diagnostic computer called Alfa Romeo Control, capable of monitoring the engine systems and alerting drivers of potential faults. And the top engines, including legendary 2.5 and 3-liter V6 Busa engines, provided enough power for a relatively lightweight car. The steering was razor sharp, quick and direct, giving the driver instant feedback. The chassis felt alive, making it a joy to throw around corners. Unlike many other cars of that time, the Alfa 75 was more emotional, more characterful, and required more involvement from the driver. And it was just a beautiful car with a distinctive look and Italian character and flair. I don't have a video about the Alfa Romeo 75 yet, but I'm planning to make one soon. Number 11. The Tatra T700. This is a very different car for many reasons. Different from any other car of the 80s and 90s. It was produced from 1996 to 1999 and less than 100 units were hand-built. I already have a video about this really cool car and I will leave the link to it in the description below. The T700 had a rather powerful 3.5-liter V8 engine and it was air-cooled and it was rear-mounted on an expensive executive limousine-type car. Where else have you seen anything like that except for other Tatra cars? It was powerful, fast enough and very comfortable. The combination of all those factors made it a very interesting car to drive, giving the drivers an impression of driving something completely different, out of this world, something that they never drove before. The T700 wasn't the best car in the world, it wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the most dynamic or most luxurious, but it was a very unusual and very interesting car which I definitely would love to drive. Number 10. The Audi RS2 Avant, or the BMW M5 E34. Yeah, here I'm cheating a little bit, and I'm placing two very different cars at once at the same position. But this is my video, so I set the rules, I guess. The reason for this is that I wanted to put the BMW here, but I actually drove it several times. So technically it is a car that I did love to drive, and not a car that I would love to drive. But it deserves mentioning here. The BMW M5 E34 was produced from 1988 to 1995, a little shorter than the regular E34, which was built from 1987 to 1996. It had a marvelous, straight 6-cylinder 3.5-liter engine with 311 horses and 0 to 60 miles in 6.3 seconds. In 1991 it was upgraded to 3.8 liters with 335 horsepower and 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. The M5 E34 had finely tuned suspension which gave a perfect balance between comfort and razor-sharp handling, making it equally capable on twisty back roads and autobahns. It was a kind of design icon of its time with its muscular appearance. This was a true driver's car, pure, engaging, and built for those who appreciated mechanical excellence. I had a lucky opportunity to drive it several times, and I truly enjoyed it. The Audi RS2 was a joint project of Volkswagen and Porsche, and was produced at the Porsche's plant in Zuffenhausen for a relatively short time from March 1994 to July 1995. It was a high-performance version of the Audi A80 Avant and was produced only as a 5-door wagon. It had a 2.2-liter inline 5-cylinder Audi turbo engine, significantly modified by Porsche and producing 311 horsepower, a top speed limited at 262 km or 163 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.8 seconds. The permanent all-wheel drive quattro system combined with a 6-speed manual gearbox was the only transmission option. And it was a wagon, so you could load all your family into the car and drive through the countryside for a picnic as fast and aggressive as you wanted, creating unforgettable memories for your wife, kids, parents and in-laws. But jokes aside, the wagon arrangement made it a really versatile car, which you could use every day for boring things and had a lot of fun with it on weekends. Number 9. The Volkswagen Corrado VR6. The Corrado was the successor of the Scirocco in the Volkswagen model line, which Volkswagen decided to give a different name for some reason. I already have a video about the Volkswagen Scirocco, and I'm planning to make a video about the Corrado too, but I yet don't know when. Like the Scirocco, the Corrado was produced not by Volkswagen, but by Karmann in Osnabrück, Germany from 1988 to 1995. It was a fun-to-drive 3-door hatchback, built on the platform of the second generation of Volkswagen Golf. But the top-of-the-line VR6 model had a better updated suspension from the third generation of the Golf platform. The VR6 model had a very interesting 6-cylinder engine. To fit it into the small space under the hood designed for 4-cylinder engines, Volkswagen engineers put the cylinders into a zigzag pattern and slightly turned 2 cylinders in relation to the other 4. This created a very compact but powerful engine. Volkswagen later used the same trick for W12 engines of Bentley, joining 2 zigzag cylinder blocks in a V shape. In the Corrado, the European version of this engine produced 190 horsepower with a top speed of 235 km or 146 miles per hour and 0 to 60 in 6.4 seconds. It had a well-tuned suspension, giving it sharp handling and impressive stability, especially with its active, automatically deployed rear spoiler. The steering was precise and communicative, making it a joy to carve through corners while still being comfortable enough for daily driving, making it one of the most exciting hot hatches of its era. Number 8. The Peugeot 205 GTI. I already have a video about the Peugeot 205. I will leave the link in the description. Long story short, many people call the 205 GTI the best driving hot hatch of its time, and maybe the best driving hot hatch ever made. There were 2 versions of the 205 GTI between 1984 and 1992 with 1.6 and 1.9 liter engines. And there is still a huge discussion in the 205 community about which version is better and cooler. Both of them were not particularly powerful, but the great suspension and sharp, precise steering, together with a very light body, made this car a real legend of hot hatches. The 205's raw, unfiltered driving experience, with direct feedback through the steering wheel and pedals, made every drive feel special. By the way, the 205 GTI was and still remains a benchmark for the development of modern performance cars of Peugeot. Number 7. The Lotus Elise Series 1. The Elise was a very small and very lightweight car with a fiberglass body on an aluminum chassis with a standard weight of around 700 kilos or 1500 pounds. But you could optionally decrease the weight even more by getting rid of comfort-related equipment like a radio. So, despite a relatively low power output of 118 horsepower, you could get to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. With its low center of gravity, mid-engine arrangement, perfect balance, razor-sharp steering, the Elise could give a huge lot of fun to experienced drivers. Stripped down to the essentials, the Elise embodied the true spirit of a driver's car, minimalist, engaging, and endlessly fun. The second generation, which came in 2001, was even better and more interesting, and among all became a mechanical base for the first Tesla Roadster. But we speak about the 80s and 90s, so let's leave the Series 2 aside for now. I don't have a video about the Lotus Elise yet, but I will definitely make it someday. Meanwhile, I can recommend you to take a look at my video about the Lotus Elan, which was also a very interesting car and an ideological predecessor of the Lotus Elise. Number 6. the Ford Sierra RS Cosworth. Of course, Ford is an American brand, but Ford Sierra, as many other passenger cars of Ford sold in Europe, was created by Ford of Europe, which was located in Worley in Essex, UK since 1967 and moved to Cologne, Germany in 1999. It was a car designed by European designers and built in Europe, and the RS Cosworth was co-engineered by a British automotive engineering company Cosworth. I believe all this justifies its inclusion in this list. The Sierra RS Cosworth was produced from 1986 to 1992 and was a super performance road homologation of a Group A car built on the basis of the basic Ford Sierra produced from 1982 to 1993. The RS had a turbocharged 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine developed by Cosworth on the basis of a Ford Pinto engine, and it produced 204 horsepower and gave the car a top speed of 238 km or 149 miles per hour, with 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds. It had a race-bred suspension and aerodynamic design, including the iconic wheel-tail spoiler. All those gave it exceptional high-speed stability and cornering grip. The aggressive turbo boost and sharp steering of the RS made it an absolute joy on twisty roads and one of the most legendary performance cars of the 80s. Number 5. The Porsche 928. It was a controversial car that many Porsche enthusiasts didn't accept at first. The front engine arrangement, V8 engines, and water cooling were very different from the iconic 911. Ironically, the 928 was the first car fully developed by Porsche, without a long tail of history and the shadow of Volkswagen. So the 928 was actually the first true Porsche. I explained what I mean in my video about the Porsche 928, check it out. The 928 was fast and powerful. It had a perfect 50-50 weight distribution and great handling both on a straight line and in corners. It was a very interesting and exciting car to drive, with its combination of powerful engines, relatively lightweight, and perfected suspension and steering. And it was a comfortable and versatile car as well, and you could use it for daily driving and family trips. The 928 was simply a great car, the best Porsche of the 80s, and one of the best cars ever built. Number 4. The second generation Seat Ibiza Cupra. Seat is the largest Spanish manufacturer of passenger cars. It was created in 1950 as a joint venture between the government of Spain and Italian Fiat and sold to Volkswagen in 1986. The name is the abbreviation of Sociedad Española de Automóviles de Turismo, meaning Spanish passenger car company. Ibiza is a small hatchback produced from 1984 until today. The second generation of the Ibiza was based on the platform of the third generation of the Volkswagen Golf and was produced from 1993 to 2002. This car, designed by famous Giorgetto Giugiaro, was interesting by itself, but in addition to that, it had several really cool performance versions. The most interesting of them was Seat Ibiza Cupra, produced from 1996 to 1999. A combination of its lightweight, a 2-liter engine producing 148 horses, and later turbo 1.8-liter engine with 180 horses, a great balance, and perfectly tuned suspension and steering gave the car a truly sporty character, making it one of the most interesting hot hatches to drive in the second part of the 90s. It isn't as well known as its cousin Volkswagen Golf GTI, but on a curvy road it probably would be an even more interesting car than the Golf GTI of the same time period. I'm going to make a video about the Seat Ibiza soon, and I hope to tell you more about this really interesting car. Okay, number 3. The TVR Chimaera and TVR Griffith. I put the Chimaera and Griffith on the same position because those cars were very closely related to each other, sharing platform and partly engines. The Griffith was a more raw and race-oriented car, and the Chimaera was more comfortable and luxury-packed. 3 factors: lightweight, ideal weight distribution, and powerful engines. What else do you need to make a perfectly driving car? Ah yes, a well-tuned suspension and steering. Well, the Chimaera and Griffith had them too. Produced between 1990 and 2003, they were the last mass-produced British cars with such a pure and exciting driver experience. They were fast and dangerous cars with a supercar dynamic. But in the hands of an experienced and reasonable driver, those cars could bring really fantastic driving feelings, emotions and memories. I already have a rather recent video about the TVR Chimaera and I invite you to watch it. Trust me, it is worth it. On the second place in the list of the cars I'd like to drive, the Lancia Delta Integrale. The first generation of the Lancia Delta, produced from 1979 to 1994, has a truly legendary status among car enthusiasts. Rally cars based on them won 6 World Rally Championships between 1987 and 1992, and the road versions of rally cars, called at first Delta HF and then Delta Integrale, were considered the best all-wheel drive hot hatches of their time, and maybe in the whole of automotive history. I have a video about the Lancia Delta. I will leave the link in the description. I also have a video about the second generation of Delta, which also was a very good and interesting car, but it didn't have that legendary shining like the first one. With engines from 175 to 212 horny ponies in different years, all-wheel drive manual transmission, lightweight with great weight distribution, responsive suspension and perfectly sharp steering, those cars were really marvelous for active driving on curvy roads. For my list of cars I'd like to drive, I would personally choose not the latest variations Integrale Evoluzione, but the earlier Delta HF Integrale 8 valves of 1988 or Delta HF Integrale 16 valves of 1989. Those cars were less powerful than the Evoluzione, but they were a little lighter and had a slightly wilder character. The 8-valve version had more torque on the rear axle and felt more like a rear-wheel drive car. The 16-valve version was the opposite. With 53% of torque on the front axle, it behaved more like a front-wheel drive car. So it would be really interesting to try them both and compare them. So far, most of the cars on this list have been small and light performance cars. But in the first place on the list of cars I'd love to drive, I put a very different car. So, the first place, the Mercedes-Benz W140 S600. The W140 was produced from 1991 to 1998. Actually it was longer and there was Maybach produced later on the same platform. But this is a long story that I told in my video about the Mercedes-Benz W140. The S600 or 600 SE in the first years was the top of the W140 line, and it was a truly unique car with its 6-liter V12 engine, producing in the first years over 400 horsepower, with a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 6.3 seconds. That was truly jaw-dropping for a car with a weight of 2200 kilos or 4900 pounds. The top speed was limited at 250 kilometers or 155 miles per hour, but with the removed limiter, the car allegedly could get to 300 kilometers or 188 miles per hour. And despite that weight and power, it was still fun to drive car, very capable not only on the straight line, but also in active cornering. Maybe it wasn't the most breathtaking driving style like with the Lancia Delta or Seat Ibiza, but it was definitely an incredibly interesting, eclectic and exciting experience, refined by the perfection of great German automotive engineering. And this uncommon combination of power, comfort, handling and driving experience is the reason why this car is at the top of this list. Well, this was my extremely subjective list of European cars of the 80s and 90s I would love to drive. I would really like to include all the interesting cars of this era, but this would make the video at least 6 hours long. There were many exciting cars at that time. I'm sure each of you, dear viewers, has a personal wish list of such cars. So please do tell me in the comments which cars would you love to drive. Do you agree with my choices and argumentation? Or would you like to dispute some of them? I really would love to see your opinions. Once again, thank you very much for viewing my videos and subscribing to my channel. And if you are not subscribed yet, just press that subscribe button below. New interesting stories are coming soon. If you want to support this channel even more and help me make new videos, you can buy me a coffee by the link in the description below. Or simply don't skip YouTube commercials on my videos. Thank you so much, my friends, and see you next time.